Okay, I think this is probably a good time to start. My name is David Miller, and today we're going to be doing the first webinar in a series where we talk about the Facility Explorer product. This first webinar, we're going to cover the basic FX architecture, FX licenses, Workbench, and have a brief look at the platform. Okay, so to kick it off, and yeah, it's interactive, so if you want to have, if any questions come up, you can either just jump in and ask the question, or you can put it in the chat in Teams. Okay. So the Facility Explorer BMS product consists of an FX server and FX80 supervisory controllers connected on a local area network, and then with a series of field devices underneath each of the supervisors. Okay, the operator can interact with the system via the IP network using a web-based user interface. So these are the three components. There's the FX server, which provides the web server for the user interface, does long-term historical data storage and alarm management. Then you have FX80 supervisory controllers. They supervise the field devices. They provide high-level automation, time schedules, alarm management, and they can also serve the web UI. The user interface can also be served up by the FX80. So in a small project, you could have an FX80 only solution, if that's appropriate. And then underneath that supervisor, you have FX field controls. So these typically control HVAC equipment. They provide local control functions. They typically communicate using BACnet MSTP communication, and they also have a sensor actuator bus that provides additional inputs and outputs and network sensors. So they're the components of the Facility Explorer system. So typical arrangement is an IP network with the FX server and FX80 controllers. And then underneath each FX80, we'll have the field control bus, the FC bus, talking to the field controllers. FX PCV, FX PCG controllers. And that FC bus is typically BACnet MSTP. So the FX80 requires a 24-volt AC or 24-volt DC power supply. Okay, it has two IP ports, so it can connect to two separate IP networks. Typically, you'd only use one IP port, but there is a second IP port available if you want to connect to two separate IP networks. It has two RS485 ports on board, and they can be expanded up to 6 additional, so a total of 6 ports using expansion modules. So look at the expansion modules. They plug into the side of the FX80, and they provide, you can have up to 4 modules plugged into the side. the different modules are, there's a dual port RS485 module. There's a Lonworks FTT 10A module, and there's an RS232 module. Okay, so the total port count is 6. So if you put 2 RS485 modules on, you'll have the 2 on board plus 4 in the expansion modules. That will give you your 6 ports. With Lonworks, you can put, each one gives you a single port, so you can put 4 modules on, plus the 2 RS485 ports on board, gives you your total of 6 ports. And similarly for RS232, which gives you only 1 port, adding 4 modules plus the 2 on board gives you a total of 6. So if we look at that in a bit more detail, here's an example of an FX80 controller with 3 modules at the top there. On board the controller, you have COM1 and COM2. You add a 485 module that gives you COM3 and COM4. If you then add a LON module, it will give you LON1. And then if you add a 232 module, it'll give you COM5. So that's the next COM port in the series. An example of using, in the middle there is, we have an example using 2 RS485 modules. We get COM1, COM2 on the controller, then COM3 and 4 on the first module, COM5 and 6 on the second module. And then the third example down the bottom, we have the main controller, a 232 module, a 485 module, and a 232 module. And that gives us the following arrangements: COM1 and COM2 on the main controller, and COM3 on the first module, 4 and 5 on the second, and then COM6 on the third. So always a total of 6 modules of 6 ports. So they can be COM ports 1 to 6, or they can be LON ports 1 to 4 plus the 2 COM ports on board. Okay, so that's expansion modules giving you additional communication ports on an FX80. So the software within the FX80.
Hi, David.
Yes.
I raised my question. I have a question regarding the COM ports.
Yep.
If we add on the COM ports, let's say we have 6 ports for RS485.
Yep.
Is there any wiring limitation, or we still follow the same RS485 wiring guidelines per port?
Yes, so each port is a standard RS485 communications bus. So that bus will support 32 standard RS485 devices. Now, if all of the devices are Johnson Controls FX devices, then we can put 64 devices on that RS485 bus, because our 485 devices have they have a higher performance than the standard RS485 product. But if you're going to mix devices from different vendors, then the limit is 32 devices on a port. And if you want to go beyond that, you can put in a repeater that will give you another 32 devices. And you could put a second repeater in and get up to 96. But that would require 2 repeaters, and the maximum number of repeaters you can have is 2. So, but by the time you spent money on a repeater, you could just as easily have spent money on a expansion module to get those the additional port. So yes, you do need to follow the RS485 standard rules. Okay. So the FX80 software supports as standard ED2, which is an RS485 protocol, BACnet MSTP and BACnet IP, Modbus RTU and Modbus IP, Lonworks FTT10A and Lonworks IP. We also support MBus, which requires an IP to MBus converter, and KNX, which also needs an IP to KNX converter. And then the last protocol that's supported as standard is SNMP, and that's an IP-based protocol. When you buy an FX80, you buy the hardware, and then you buy a device license that defines the capacity of the FX80. So the capacity is how many devices can I connect to. So you can buy a core license that lets you connect to 5 devices, or a license for 10 or 25, 100 or 200 devices. So it's possible to connect to 200 field devices by buying a single FX80 hardware and then adding a 200 device license to that hardware. If you wanted to go somewhere in between, like 75 devices, you can buy an add-on license of either 10, 25 or 50. So to get 75, you'd buy a core license of 25 and an add-on license of 50. Okay. As well as a device limit, there's also a point limit, and it's 50 points per device. So a 10 device core license will give you 500 points, and a 200 device license will give you 10,000 points. And these are points that are mapped through the field devices. Well, likewise, when you add on devices, you also add on points. So adding on 10 devices adds on 500 points. So the part numbers are listed here. So 5 devices or 250 points, 10 devices, 500, and so on. So they're the core licenses. These are the add-on licenses. Okay. When you purchase an FX80, you also purchase software maintenance. So software maintenance provides upgrades and patches for the duration of the maintenance period. And the options are 1 year, 3 years, or 5 years. The license that you order is based on the core device license that you have. And you must get maintenance with the initial purchase. Okay. When the software maintenance expires, the FX80 continues to operate. So it will keep working. There's not a requirement that you must have software maintenance forever. You just have to buy it for that first 1 year period. The FX80 will continue to operate. But once the maintenance has expired, if you want to upgrade the software in the FX80, you cannot do it unless you've got an active maintenance license in place. Okay, so the maintenance license just lets you upgrade the software in the FX80. So the part numbers for maintenance is in the middle column. And so a core license 005 has a maintenance 005 M1 for 1 year, 3 or 5 years. Now the initial 1 year license that you buy is actually 18 months. So that's to cover the 6 months of construction plus the 12 months of defects liability. Okay, so a typical project, you can get through the end of defects using your single 1 year maintenance. Okay, and so the important thing is that the core license number, if it's CL200, then the maintenance number will be D200. Okay. Now for FX server.
David?
Yes?
One question on the maintenance license.
Yep.
So it's clear that when you want to upgrade, you need to have a valid maintenance license.
Yes.
But let's say the customer has bought a 100 device license, maintenance has expired, and they want to add on device license. Does the maintenance still need to be valid, or they can purchase the device license?
They can purchase a device license, so they can add on. Yeah, they can add on, even though the maintenance has expired. They can add additional devices if they wanted to. It's just that whatever version the FX80 is, it will stay at that version.
Got it.
Yep.
Hi, David. James here.
Yep.
Can the customer buy direct for 3 years or 5 years instead of 18 months?
So for that initial license?
No. Yeah, for the initial license, can they buy 3 years direct?
They can. So if you had if a 3 year license makes more sense for your initial purchase, then you could buy 3 years as your first purchase.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Yeah. And likewise 5 years if that makes sense. Yeah. But for a typical new construction project, 1 year is, or 18 months is considered what you would normally buy. Yep. Okay. So FX server. So FX server is very similar to an FX80, except it's software only component. And it resides on your choice of PC hardware, and you have to provide the PC hardware. And the FX server license is based on the number of Niagara devices that you're going to connect to, and also the number of IP devices if you plan to connect to IP devices. So FX server is very similar to FX80, except it has no RS-232 or RS-485 connections. Its only connections are IP. So it connects to Niagara devices like other FX80s. It'll connect to BACnet IP devices or Modbus TCP. It can also connect to OPC, OBIX, Lonworks IP, or SNMP. So an example of an FX server talking to 3 FX80s, the Niagara device count would be 3. So you would buy a Niagara device license for 3 devices. If you wanted to have 4 you could add on one license at a time using add-on licenses. So the initial or equivalent to a core license is 0, 1, 2, 3, or 10, or 100, or unlimited. And then you can add on licenses either one at a time or 100 at a time, or you can upgrade from 100 to unlimited. With Niagara devices, there's no point limit. So the license doesn't limit the number of points that you can map between the server and the Niagara device. So these are the part numbers for FX server, and these are the add-on part numbers. So in this example at the top here, we would have an FX SL003 for 3 Niagara device license.
David?
Yep.
I have a question for this.
Yes.
So before that, my BCS is facing a problem. So they are claiming that the FX server itself is count as a Niagara connection. Is it? So for example, FXSL002, there's 2 Niagara devices, right?
Yep.
So I should be able to connect to 2 FX80.
Correct.
So, but their problem is they only can connect to one. And another one, the server itself is count as a Niagara connection.
So that doesn't sound correct. And it may be that they may have defined their FX server as a device when they didn't need to.
Probably.
Yeah. So what you're describing is not correct. So if that's what they're seeing, then we need to investigate that.
Okay.
Okay.
So maybe I ask my business to bring up this issue because he's in this meeting as well.
Yep.
And Vin, can you please ask David and explain what's your setup? And Vin?
Hi Ong, I really miss out.
So Vin, just now we are saying that the Niagara connection. So if you purchase 2 devices, you should have 2 Niagara connection. But I think last week you tell me so you purchased the two device connection and you only have one, and another one you reserve for the Niagara server. So can you explain more details on your setup?
All right. So David, my question is this.
Yes.
The first thing is when we are purchasing the license few years ago, we are encountering that we need 2 Niagara com to use, one on the FX server, another one is for the FX80 nodes. So that's why we realized when we are doing the graphics, poolings, and designing the UI to store at the FX servers, it seems that without the extra license, we can't do it. It's something like directly connected to the FX80, but without the extra nodes license, I can't do it on the FX server sites. That's why I purchased 2 licenses previously for 1 job.
Okay.
Right.
So your FX server. So I'm showing Workbench with an FX server defined.
Right.
And underneath that FX server station, you have drivers, a Niagara network with 2 FX80s. Okay. So that FX server does not appear on that Niagara network. So the license is how many devices can you have on that Niagara network. Now, if you have a 2-device license, you should be able to have 2 Niagara devices on your Niagara network. Now, if you had FX server on this Niagara network, then that's not the correct way to do it. So that's
all right. Maybe we get it now, because few years back, is like 3 to 4 years ago.
Yep.
Maybe we configured it wrongly. That's
Yep.
why we 2 nodes to enable the link between the servers and the FX80.
yeah. So yeah, so this is how your Niagara network what it should look like. Yeah, so we can, yeah, if it's still an issue, we can have a look at, if we can have a remote dial in and have a look, we can confirm either that you're doing it the right way or what you need to do to make it right. But this is how the FX server is set up, as a station with drivers and a Niagara network, and it's the number of devices on this network is what the license defines. So in this example, there's 2 devices on this Niagara network on this FX server. Okay.
All right, Dave, thank you. We get it.
Okay.
So maybe in the future, if you really need to get it, I think mostly because of the Niagara-based network connections between the licensings, we are not able to link it like what you show here. Yep. That's why we're using 2 nodes to make a link between the servers and the FX80. If there's only 1 node required per FX80 and no extra node purchase required for the FX servers, I think this is the correct way to do it, and then maybe we can explore it in future.
Yeah, yeah. So we might, yeah, as we, in the other webinars, we might go into a bit more detail. So yeah, I think at the end of this, it should be clear how you do it. Yeah. So, yeah. All right. So we'll.
All right. Thank you,
Okay.
David. Thank you.
Good. Thanks, man. Okay. So. So that's the Niagara connections for an FX server. An FX server can also connect directly to IP devices. So BACnet IP, Modbus IP, or Lonworks IP devices. Okay, so in this case, the FX server is behaving just like an FX80. And in order to make these connections, it requires an IP device license. And they come in lots of 10, 25, 50, 100, 200, 500, 1,000. And I think we can actually get 2,000 now. They can be part of the initial purchase or they can be added later. They have the same points limit of 50 points per device. So 1,000 IP devices is 50,000 points. Okay. So the part numbers are listed for the devices and the points.
David?
Yep.
For the IP configuration,
Yes.
So in this scenario, we can bypass the J's, right? So we don't need the FX80.
That's right. So you could do a project where you have just an FX server.
Okay. But I just want to know, is there any limitation for this configuration?
So the limitation is the device license and the the server hardware. Because it's a PC, the hardware is effectively unlimited in its capacity. Like, you can add more RAM, you can have more CPUs, so you can scale the hardware as you add additional devices. So if you get a $500 laptop and you put 1,000 IP devices on it, it's possibly not going to work.
Yes.
Yeah.
So
you can do an 1,000 IP device project with an FX server, okay? But you need to plan what the FX server hardware is to support that. So I can't do that today, tell you what that is.
Okay.
But if you're quoting 1,000 IP device project, then you have a bit of time to do some research and work out exactly what you need.
Okay. Thank you, David.
Yep. So, yes, FX80, the hardware is limited to 200 devices by the license, and that it's got definite hardware constraints. There is only one processor, there's only so much memory, it's defined piece of hardware. FX server, the hardware is the PC that you install the software on. That's up to you to purchase the correct the correct hardware, and to set it up correctly to suit the number of devices that you're planning to have. Okay. And FX server can have a Windows operating system, but it can also have a Linux operating system. Okay, so we've done point count. FX server also has software maintenance. Again, for 1, 3, or 5 years. And the maintenance that you order is based on the Niagara device license. So if there's 3 Niagara connections, the software maintenance is based on 3 Niagara connections. Yep. When you first purchase it, you must also purchase maintenance as part of that initial purchase. And the same as the FX80, when the maintenance expires, FX server continues to operate. But if you want to apply an upgrade of the software after the expiry date, you have to purchase a maintenance license to cover the period from expiry to the present. Yep.
David, what's the version now, N4?
14.9, which is 4.9.
Okay.
And so if you had a software maintenance that expired today, then that license will support 4.9. Okay, so even though if you bought an FX80 and it had 4.5 when you purchased it, and you had a year's maintenance and we went from 5 to 9, and then it expired, at any time you can load 4.9 onto that FX80, because that was the last version available before the license expired, before the maintenance expired. Okay, so you don't have to have it in place when the maintenance expires. It just puts a limit on what version you can go to after the maintenance is expired. So the part numbers for maintenance are, it's always based on the number of Niagara connections. So if you do a single Niagara connection, SL001, then SL001 M1 is the maintenance for 18 months initially, M3 for 3 years, M5 for 5 years. Okay. So here's an example of an FX server that has 3 FX80s and 2 BACnet IP devices that it wants to connect to. So you would order FX SL003 for the 3 Niagara connections, 3M1 for the maintenance for 1 year, and then you'd order SLDL010 for the 10 IP device license. You would use 2 of those device licenses, and you'd have 8 spares. Okay. And if you wanted to, you could map 500 points out of these 2 IP devices, because that's your point count limit, is 500. Okay. Another example of an FX80 with 5 devices, 250 points, 1 year software maintenance. These are the 3 part numbers that you would order. CL005 for your 5 devices, D005M1 for your initial maintenance of 1 year. Okay. If you wanted to do 75 devices, you would get a core license of 25. Sorry, that's wrong. That should be, if we wanted to do, oh no, sorry. If we did, this is correct. So you would get your core license of 25 plus your maintenance for 25, and then you would add on 50 devices to give you a total of 75 devices. So the important thing being that the maintenance is tied to the core license. 25, 25. We look at a server example. FX server with 12 Niagara devices and 1 year's maintenance. You would buy the FX SL10, gives you 10 Niagara connections, and the initial maintenance that goes with it, so 10 M1. And then you would buy 2 add-on licenses to get you the 12. Okay. If you then wanted to add 60 IP devices to that FX server, you would add on a device license 50 plus a device license 60. Okay.
Hi, David. Could you go back to the example of the 75 device?
Yep.
Okay, so let's say, for example, initial license, they purchased 25 with a 1-year maintenance for the 25 to 99 device.
Yep.
And with the add-on of 50, right?
Yep.
So this is the initial purchase.
Yes.
They've commissioned the system. Down the road, they add on another 25 device license, which makes it 100.
Yep.
What kind of maintenance license should they buy for that, or is it no issue?
So, yeah, so they don't need to, yeah, it's no issue. So that initial maintenance license, so that initial core license that they purchase defines the maintenance license that they buy, even though they might have added on later. It's the initial purchase is what matters. Yeah.
All right.
Yeah, so the short answer is there is no issue. Yeah, it just stays at 25.
Hi, David. Yep.
Yep.
Okay, for application purpose, what is the recommended so-called limitation for FX80? How many devices is the maximum?
So, yeah, so 200 would be the recommended maximum. So if you went beyond 200, you can add on. Once you go past 200, you have to use add-on licenses of either 10, 25 or 50. So adding on is expensive. Okay, so by the time you've got to 200, if you go beyond 200, it's probably more cost effective to have 2 FX80s rather than 1. So an FX80 doing 200 plus another FX80 doing 100 is probably a more cost-effective solution than having an FX80 with 200 devices plus 50 add-on plus 50 add-on. Yeah. So just from a cost of equipment point of view, 200 is a natural limit. Also from making connections to the FX80 through the available RS485 ports or through the IP port, just making those connections there's a natural limit there as well. So 200 is a good limit to work around. Yeah. So does that help?
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, that's help. Thanks. Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, David.
Yeah.
So come back to this scenario again. So 75 devices.
Yes.
They purchase additional 50 devices.
Yes.
So if later the project require another 50 devices, so
yep.
currently they need 125 devices.
Yes.
Okay. So will the maintenance license cover it? Because it's from 25 until 99 devices, and then now they have 125 devices.
Yep.
So they do need to purchase another maintenance license. This will remain the same or what?
Yes.
Okay.
Now remember that if they're buying, and by the time they've got to this point, they've bought 2 lots of 50.
Okay.
Which is significantly more than the 100 device license that they could have purchased up front. So adding on licenses is an expensive way to get licenses, is what I'm saying.
Yes,
so,
I just worry that the
yeah.
maintenance license in the future is not able to cover, and then they need to purchase another maintenance license to cover it.
Yeah, so down the track, the maintenance that they purchase is based on that initial number, so 25 in this case. Yeah.
Okay, thank you, David.
Yeah. And
David,
so, yeah.
To add on to the Chính question,
Yeah.
when go for the next renewal, so far is 125 device.
Yep.
So when you go for the next maintenance, let's say another 3 years.
Yep.
So what is the SMA?
It'll
125 or 25?
025 M3. Yeah. Because that's the core license that you purchased. Yeah.
So they should go for the 100 device so-called maintenance?
No, they only need to go to the 025 maintenance.
For the next renewal?
For the next renewal, yeah. Even though they've exceeded it, it's based on that initial core license that they purchased.
Okay, understood.
Yep, yep. Yeah, but the issue is, like, you don't expect to be adding, like the add-on license of 10, 25, or 50 is an expensive way to expand the system. So if you had a project where you put in this FX80, you had 70 devices used up and you have 5 spare, and then you have a requirement to do another 100 devices, right? You could buy 250 add-ons and make this 175 and complete the project, or you could buy a new FX80 with a 100 device license and complete the project. And so in practice, it would be more cost effective to buy an extra FX80 with the 100 device license, because you get a much cheaper rate for 100 versus 2 times 50. Plus, you've got a simpler configuration, you've got less load on the controller, everything's simpler. So the reason for the only time that you should be adding on devices is just to cover that shortfall where you're counting on there being 75, but there was minor changes and now it's 85 or 80, and you just got to cover those extra licenses, and then that part of the building is complete and we don't need to add any more. If you're adding more than 50, you should be thinking, is it better to have an additional FX80 in this situation? Okay. So that's
okay. Thank you, David.
Yep. So that's pretty much the architecture and the licensing arrangement. The next thing for today is to look at the FX Workbench and just to show you how that all translates to an FX Workbench, or what does that look like in practice, yeah? So this is FX Workbench, and in this case it's version 14.7. It's installed on my PC, and when I install it and activate it, I get 2 things. I get the FX Workbench software, which is client. It's a client software that can talk to a Niagara platform. So it can talk to a Niagara platform that's running on my PC, which is this platform here. or it can connect to a remote platform or a remote station that's on the IP network. So this is an example here where I've previously connected to a platform and station at this IP address. Okay, if I try and connect there now, it'll time out because there is no platform at that IP address at the moment. Okay, so when you purchase and activate FX Workbench, you get two things. You get a platform that can run on your PC, and you also get the client Workbench software, which allows you to connect to that platform and also to connect to other platforms like the FX80 that are on your IP network. So we failed to connect to that platform because it's not there. Yeah. But if I connect to this platform, the platform is on my PC, so my host, my computer. And the platform credentials is my Windows username and password. So now I've connected to that platform, and these are the items on the platform. We have an application director that lists all of the stations that I have available on this platform, and one of those stations is running. That's this one here. From this application director, I can start and stop stations. I can also configure the station to auto start. So if this was a typical FX server application, I would have my BMS server station on this platform, and I would have it auto start. So whenever the PC started up, this station would start up and run. Okay. Also, as part of my platform, I have certificate management, where I get to manage my SSL certificates that identify and trust the various devices on my network. So if my FX server connects to an FX80, the FX80 will have a certificate that my server has to recognize and trust. So in the allowed hosts file lists all of the certificates from all of the FX80s out there that I recognize and I'm happy to connect to. Okay, so at the moment that's empty, but as part of these webinars we'll go through the process of how we set up trusted connections between the FX server and the FX80. The next item on the platform is the lexicon installer. This is how we manage different languages within Niagara. So at the moment there's only one language installed on this PC, and that's English. But you can install other languages if required. Next item is the license manager. So this allows you to manage the license that lets this software run on this PC. So when I install it on this PC, the install process generates a host ID. So that's my host ID up there. Okay, that host ID is unique. There is only one computer in the world with that host ID, and it's this one. Okay, when I activate my license, my Facility Explorer license, it comes as a text file that looks like this. And the first line of that text file has the host ID. So this license is tied to this computer by the host ID. Okay. In this particular case, the license expires on the 31st of October because this is a demo license. Okay, so it expires every year and gets renewed every year. If it was on a project and you'd ordered FX server, expiration would say never. But there would be a maintenance expiration date, and that's the date that the maintenance agreement or the software maintenance that was ordered, when that expires. The other thing that's important on the first line is the version 4.9. So when this license was generated, that was the current version of the software. And so I can run version 4.9 software on this PC. I can also run version 4.7, which is what I'm running now. So I can, 4.9 is the highest, but I can also, this license will allow me to run earlier versions as well. Okay. So the first line is very important. It's got the host ID and typically when the maintenance will expire and what the current version is. The rest of the lines define all of the features that are available. So with FX Facility Explorer, there's a standard set of features. So this is nearly always the same from one project to the next, from one installation to the next. You'll have the same set of features. Okay. There are some additional features might get activated, like database connections to an SQL server. If you buy that additional license, then that appears as a feature in this file. So when you buy additional features, they show up as additional lines in this license file, and we issue you with a new license file. Okay. When we send it out in an email, you can go to this license manager page and you can import the file. So you can import it using a file, or you can import it from your C drive in the local license database, or you can import it by going and connecting to the Tritium, to the internet, and the Tritium licensing server will activate it. Okay. So if you install FX server software on your PC for the first time, power it up, the first thing it'll do is come up and say it's not licensed, and it'll tell you the host ID. You send that host ID to us along with your order for FX server or Workbench or whatever it is that you've ordered. We activate that host ID with the license that you've ordered. We'll send you back the license file in the email. But if you have an internet connection, then next time you power up, your PC will go out on the internet, connect to the license server, the Tritium license server, and if the license is there, it'll automatically activate it. So even though we send you the license file, you may not need to install it. It might just automatically work if you're connected to the internet. Okay. So that's the license manager. The next node is the platform. Yep.
David?
Yeah.
So just now I saw for our FX license, right?
Yep.
So if there is an existing system using another Niagara,
yeah,
is it able to connect to our J's? I mean, like there's existing J's over there, and our brand is Facility Explorer. So we're able to pull the J's in to our system.
So this is so if we provide the FX, so we have FX server, and there's a third party.
Yes.
J. Yeah. So on our FX server, we create a station which has a Niagara network, and it connects to Niagara devices. Okay.
Yep.
In this case, we have two FX80 Niagara devices, and we've got a 2-device license.
Okay.
If we had a 3-device license, we could add a third Niagara device, and it does not have to be an FX80. It can be somebody else's Niagara 4 device, provided that their license will accept our connection. Okay, so provided they're open, we can connect to them and map them into our Niagara network. And once they're in our Niagara network, we can see their points, we can map their points, we can do a whole lot of things. We can do all of the things we'd normally expect to do. Okay, what we might not be able to do is go to that device on the IP network and open up the station, because we won't be opening an FX station. We'll be opening a Vicon station or a Distech station, and that station might require Vicon or Distech modules to be loaded in Workbench in order for us to display items inside that station. Okay, so while it is open and you can make these connections, you have to be a little bit careful about exactly what you can and can't do. And that is as much to do with the third party as it is with us. And likewise, if this was Vicon, this was a Vicon server, it would look very similar to this. And it would have a Niagara network, and it could connect to this FX80, and it would see these points. It could map points. You could do everything that we do in here, Vicon could do. But if Vicon went down here and tried to connect to our FX80, there would be certain nodes, certain items on our tree that they don't have the necessary modules to display. Does that make sense?
Yeah, David. So what are the things that you actually do at that station down there that is different? Is it just editing the database?
So, yeah, so what happens here? So if we double click on this station, which is remote from my PC, our Workbench is just a client to that remote station. Okay. And the first thing it does, it gets a list of all of the objects in that station. Now, if one of those objects is a Distech controller and there's a special Distech import module that's only available from Distech, then that module won't be on my Workbench, and it won't. And if it was, it might not be licensed to run on my workbench. So when it came to displaying that Distech device, my workbench won't have the necessary software, the necessary module to display that item. Okay, so what we might get is we might get the tree come up, we might be able to navigate around, but when we get to the node that's important, at this particular node, and we try and display it, we'll get an error that says can't display or module not found. Okay, so we might be able to do 80, 90% of what you need to do. Okay, but depending on what it is, we might not even get the first initial load of the tree. So it's very hard to say, yes, 100% you can connect to a Distech JACE and see everything, do everything in the Distech JACE. What we can say is you can create a Niagara network and you can discover the Distech JACE and you can discover his points, you can map his points, you can put his points on our graphics, you can do just about everything you need to do, but when it comes to managing that Distech JACE, adding devices to it, adding points to it, making changes to it, you may not be able to do that with our FX software. And that, whether you can or can't, is entirely up to Distech and their product and how their product behaves. So it's open, but it requires both parties to be open, 100% open. So it's open, but it's not, if that helps.
Okay, thank you, David.
Okay.
So another question.
Yep.
Another question.
Yep.
So if the existing site is using Metasys.
Metasys, yep.
Yep. So how should we configure it?
So it depends.
Is it the same way?
So if the existing site is Metasys, there's two things that you might be going to do. If you need to just add a device to the Metasys system, then you can add an FX80 and configure it as a BACnet IP device, in which case Metasys will see that BACnet IP device, they'll see its points, and away you go. So you still have a Metasys system at the end of the day, but it's got this third-party BACnet IP device, which happens to be an FX80 that does what it does. The other arrangement is if you've got a Metasys site and you want to turn it into a Facility Explorer site so that the user interface is now Facility Explorer. In that situation, I would buy an FX server with a BACnet IP device license with enough IP device licenses and points to cover all of the Metasys NAEs, because each NAE will be mapped in as a BACnet IP device into your FX server station. Okay, so you would have, under your drivers here, you'd have a BACnet network. Under that BACnet network, each NAE would appear as a BACnet device. Underneath that BACnet device would be all of the points that are inside the NAE.
Okay, thank you, David.
Yep. So we were talking about licenses. That's all good. The next item in the platform management is the platform administration window. And that lets you do things like back up the station, view all of the details of the platform. So all of the modules, everything about it. You can copy that to clipboard, send it as an email. So if you want to just take a record of what's here, that would do it. If you wanted to change your platform login, you would do it through the update authentication. Similarly, if you wanted to change the passphrase that encrypts all of the data, you could do it through here. Changing the TLS protocols, whether they're 1.0, 1.1, 1.2. So there might be customers that require different TLS protocols. And so on. This one lets you, in our application director, we have our station that is running, and then we have our system log that's recording everything that's happens in the platform. So every time there's an error, it records it, and so on. In your platform administration, we can control the degree of logging. So at the moment, everything's set for information. You can turn it off and it will record nothing, or you can make it all and it will record all of the details, and there'll be lots of entries whether you need them or not. So this is mainly used if you want to try and debug a particular issue that you're having. You can change the amount of information that gets recorded in the system log. Okay. Next item is software copier. This lets you copy a station from your hard disk into the platform. Okay, so this list of stations here that I have available to run is this list here on the right hand side. So they're all of the stations that I have loaded into my platform and ready to go. At the moment we're running this one here. If I want to, I can take a copy of that running station and copy it onto my C drive in this location here. And I can give it a new name, or I can keep the old name. So I copy every file and directory, and I'll delete the one I've already got there. And essentially I'm taking a backup or a copy of what's running and putting it onto a different spot on my hard drive so that I've got a backup. Now you can do this at the moment. I'm doing this on my FX server. So I'm just copying it from one part of my hard disk to a different part. But if this was a remote platform on an FX80, I would have the same option, but I'd be copying from the FX80 to the hard disk of my PC. Okay. So just then I copied from here over to this location on my C drive. Okay. If I was about to make major changes online, I was going to add some things, subtract some things, make some big changes. If I wanted to make a copy before I do that, just to be safe, I can copy it and give it a new name like 001. Okay, so now I've taken a snapshot of what's here. If it all goes wrong and I break it and I want to go back to where I was, I can come after I've done that. If this all went horribly wrong, I could come to the copy that I made previously and I can copy it back. Yep. So station copier just lets you copy the station backwards and forwards. Yep. Last item in the TCP/IP configuration. This is where I set up my IP connections. Now, because this platform is running on, my computer, I see all of the IP connections that are on my computer. If this was running on an FX80, I would just see 2 IP connections corresponding to the 2 IP ports of the FX80. Okay, so somewhere in here is the one that I'm actually using. And I think this is it. Yeah. And so if I needed to change my IP network, I could do that. I would do it through Windows rather than through here. Okay. So that's the platform. Now, when I connected to that platform, I put in my Windows username and password. Okay. They gave me the application director, which lists all of the stations that are available to run on this platform. And I can select a station and I can start it, or I can set it to auto start. Typically, you would only run one station at a time. In an FX80, you can only run one station at a time. On an FX server, you would normally only run one at a time, but you might have there might be occasions where you need to run 2, but I don't think you would in practice. Yep. So that's your platform. Once your station's up and running, you can then connect to the station. And that's, now you log in using the station username and password. Okay, so now I've got a connection to my station. And this is the tree inside my station. If I double click on the root, I see my main graphic, my home page graphic for this server, for this site. Okay, I can navigate to graphics, navigate to a fan core unit, go back to level 5, go back to the home. I can look at my water meters and so on. Go back to home. So this is the user interface that the typical operator would see, and this is built by the ABCS. You build this page and you build these links and all the rest of it. Okay. On the tree on the left, you have a configuration folder with the drivers folder. So the drivers folder has all of the network connections for this particular station. In our case, we only have a Niagara network that connects to Niagara devices. And when we look at a Niagara device, we have a list of points which we can structure around folders. So level 5, a unit, and then points. Okay, so if we double click that, we see the graphic for that point, but we can also look at the Niagara Point Manager and we can see where this point is coming from. Okay, and if we, so when we navigate around in Workbench, every node that we click on, we get to view the top right hand corner here. We get different views of the same point. So there's a property sheet view and a wire sheet view. The property sheet view just lists all of the properties associated with that node. If I go to my points, so under there you've got points. In my property sheet, I've also got points. I expand points out, I get that same list, yeah? If I expand out level 5, I'm getting the same list. And if I expand out that folder, I get the points. Okay. And in here, we can see where the point that we've mapped to in the FX80 we can see that it's in the BACnet network on the FX80. It's in a folder called level 5. It's in a device called ACU, in a points folder, and a point called return air damper. Okay, so this Niagara point, which is a point within a Niagara device, has been mapped up to the Niagara server. Okay, so this, if I go to that same point here, return air damper, if I double click here, I get the property sheet view, which is just that property sheet view of this node on the tree. If I double click on the folder above, I get the graphic view. Okay, I could also change that to the property sheet view, or I could change it to the wiresheet view. So these are all views of the same node, different ways of looking at the same thing. Likewise, when I look in my services at my user service, these are all of the users that are defined in this station. So I'm currently logged in as admin. If I double click admin, I get the property sheet view for that user. And these are all the details, things like the password, what type of role I have, and so on. If I double click on user service, I get the user manager view, which lists all of my users and allows me to edit them or to add a new user. Or I can look at the same thing as the property sheet view, which lists each of the users as a property sheet. Yep. So the next session that we do, we will go through the process of creating this station from scratch. Okay. So we use a tool called the new JCI station. We select that. That takes us through a process of choosing what it is that we want to have in our station. And it does all of the groundwork and builds the initial station for us with all of this detail created. And then from there, we work through and do the necessary work to create the station for our particular project. So in the Facility Explorer architecture, every FX80 is the same. It's just got a different station running in it. So the level 5 FX80 compared to the level 6 FX80, they're both the same hardware, same software, everything's the same, except one's got the level 5 station running, the other one's got the level 6 station loaded and running inside that FX80. So the station is the site-specific item that you create when you engineer and put together the project. You're creating the station that gets loaded into the FX80, or in this case, gets loaded into my FX server. So this station, BMS server, is the station that's running on this PC. Okay. So is there any questions on anything we've covered so far?
So far, so good.
Okay. Now the next session for tomorrow, we will start with new JCI station. Now, if you like, I can show you, we can go through those steps now. And as if you want to do a bit of exercise overnight, if you have Workbench, then you could go through these steps yourself overnight and create your own station as a bit of homework. So if you have a new project, the first thing you do is you come into FX Workbench and you go Tools, New JCI Station. Okay, and I select that. And we'll call it Training FX80. So I'm creating a station to go into an FX80. I give it a name, and so that's the name in brackets there. BMS server is the name of this station. ATP B2 is the name of this station. These are the names, yep. So I give it a name, and then I go next. I now put in the password for the admin user. So when you connect to this station for the first time, it's going to ask you for a password. This is the password that you're going to put in. So I put a password in, and I confirm it.
David.
Yep.
When I installed Workbench, there was also a passphrase.
Yes.
When I first time installed it,
Yep.
Would it be the same for this password, or this password can be anything else? This
password can be anything else. It can be the passphrase, but that's just, there's no connection. So this is the password that the admin user will use to log onto this station.
Right.
Okay. So we're creating a new station with a new admin user that will have this password. Okay. So I go next. And now it's saying, what networks do I want? Do I want an N2? I'll say no, I don't want an N2 network. I don't want a LAN network, but I do want a BACnet, IP, and MSTP network. I get both of those. NDIO is the Niagara IO modules, so I don't have any of those. I don't have any SNMP. So I go next. Do I want Modbus RTU? I'll say yes, I'll have one Modbus RTU network. And I'll leave it at that, but I could also have a Modbus TCP gateway or a server or so on. I go next. I won't have the tunnel service or the weather or SMS. Go next. So when I click, this is just confirming what I've asked for. So when I click finish, save the station, and we'll copy it into the secure platform for localhost with station copier. So I'll do this, choose this option, which means I can run this station on my PC. So even though it's going to be eventually installed on an FX80, In the meantime, I can run it on my PC and I can do the work on my PC and then copy it over to the FX80 when I get to site. So I choose to copy it to secure like platform, localhost using station copier. So I go finish. So it asks me for my Windows username and password, so I can do that copy. And do I want to start it after I've installed it? I'll say no and no. And I go finish. Okay, so what happened then? We created a station called Training FX80 on my C drive, and then we use station copier to copy it across to the secure part of my PC, and it's not there yet. If I go closed and say yes, there it is, waiting to go. Okay, and if I go to the one that's already running and I stop it, and once that's finished stopping, I will start my training FX80. Okay, so it stopped. Now I select training FX80 and I start. Okay, so now it's up and running on my platform, on my host, on my computer. Yep. And if I now open the station, admin, put in the password that I put in when I created it, go OK. And now I've logged on to this new station that I created. So I look at the config. In my drivers, I've got a BACnet network and a Modbus network. And I've also got a Niagara network. So you always have a Niagara network. But in this case, when I chose the options, it's created a BACnet network for me and a Modbus network. And if I double click on the route, I get the standard home page that we get for Facility Explorer. And this is your starting point for, you edit this to create the home page for your project. So that's how you create a new JCI station. And tomorrow we'll go through the process of how it's laid out, what it all means, and so on. So, is there any questions on any of that?
David, Sri here.
Yep.
For the workbench, can we have multiple stations running?
You can. It doesn't really make sense to have multiple stations running, and you have to do some special things to make it work. So
right.
In here, we've got one station running, and it's using these ports. So 1911, 4911, 80, and 443. Okay. If I wanted to run this station as well, I would have to change those port allocations so that they didn't clash with these ones. So you can run several stations at the same time, but there isn't much, you wouldn't do it normally. The only time you would do it would be if you wanted to do some testing of between two stations.
Correct.
So, yeah, so there is you may want to do it, but there's probably not very many occasions where you need to do it. And if you do, then you have to be careful how you manage the port allocations. But yeah, you could set up two stations running on your PC. You could set up a Niagara network between those two stations and share data between them. So you could make it look like you've got an FX server and an FX80 and have them both running on your PC and do that work. But when you took that whole system to site, you have to then change all these ports back around and get it all working again on site. So yes, you can run more than one station. Whether you do in practice is fairly rare. Yeah.
Would there be a topic to cover these ports and explain to everyone what is FOX protocol and all that?
Yes. So we'll go through all that. Probably tomorrow we'll talk about all that. Yeah.
Great.
Okay. So if you have a copy of Workbench, then at the end of this session or sometime between now and tomorrow, if you can go to Tools, New JCI Station, and follow those steps and create a station, run it in your platform, log on, and get to this point, then tomorrow you'll be able to work along with, you'll have what I have, and we can work along together, yeah?
Got it.
Okay. So, yeah, if there's any questions, then I haven't seen anything in the chat or anything, so I think we're probably okay.
Hi guys, if anyone has any questions, please feel free to share. This is the best time to get your doubts clarified. Of course, you can leave the questions for the more relevant modules. These questions should be more identified to this introduction presentation for today.
Yeah. And yeah, or you can, if you want to send an email overnight, we can address it tomorrow as well. That's another option. Yeah. So if there's no questions for now, I'm happy to call it a day. Yeah, Sri, you're happy?
Yep, I think it's a good beginning. We've got a good turnout. Let's keep the momentum going. And guys, please come on time for tomorrow's training, because David will start on time. And I hope it's a fruitful session for everyone. Thank you very much.
All right. Thank you.